The Walt Disney Company is planning to spend $60 billion to quote-unquote turbocharge the parks. Most of that appears to be going to capacity. And what kind of capacity? It sounds like a completely new kind of DVC. And by completely new, we mean cheaper for them. And maybe not so cheap for guests. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place and fellow leaker along with WDW Pro. We've got a lot to talk about today. And for that, we've brought in two people who know a lot about the theme parks and can comment on this DVC situation. Mr. Vash Sky and Mr. Culture Casino. Guys, how's it going?
Well, I'm looking at my points chart right now and I'm not happy.
I'm sorry to hear that, Culture. I'll have to see if you can unload any of those and if I can give you a reasonable rate for them sometime.
There you go. Fair enough.
As many people know, it is Leak Week here on the WDW Pro channel and also on That Park Place. Now, while That Park Place is not a place that we usually go to for leaks, I don't like leaks, except that this one is about as official as you can get. I've seen the documentation. This one I was very surprised at, and it hits in that business sector for me. When I heard the words, it made so much sense to me, and then I saw what they were doing with it, and I disliked it even more. I'm going to stop speaking in code, and I'm going to let you guys know what I've seen. So, it seems that the Disney Timeshare Program, otherwise known as the Disney Vacation Club, or DVC, I've already said that like 6 times in this video and didn't explain what it is. That is what Disney describes as their super fans who buy vacations 30 years in advance. They really like to talk about them. This is a segment of the company that has always made them a lot of money. But as the parks decline, because the movies decline, DVC starts to lose its value. Despite that, it's still a good moneymaker for the parks. In order to innovate in this space and increase capacity, Disney has decided to revamp the Disney Vacation Club by adding in an additional tier. It's not a value tier. They have decided to add in a moderate category of Disney Vacation Club. And the Fort Wilderness Cabins are the new form of that. Have you seen anything about the Fort Wilderness Cabins?
Oh, yes. I've seen a little bit about these Fort Wilderness Cabins right here. It's interesting because I don't think there is a washer and dryer machine in those cabins, which really hurts obviously the value prospect for guests staying extended in these properties. So that's very interesting. But I've obviously, I think we covered it on T3PO. Interestingly enough, T3PO Live, by the way, definitely subscribe to that channel. But I believe we covered the fact that obviously Reflections was put off, so no more of that DVC, and so they were looking to fill the slot that would have occupied with some other concepts. And I thought the Fort Wilderness Cabins were part of that strategy, but it looks like they're part of another strategy entirely. Very interesting.
Right. Culture?
Yeah, so much for blending in with nature, like Reflections was going to do. Instead, we're going to put you in a what would it's not really a cube farm, it's more of a container farm.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it. So let's talk a little bit about these Fort Wilderness Cabins.
Sure.
Here. First of all, they're considered prefabricated. They are made offsite, put there, and there's a little bit of construction that goes on there on site. Culture, you have an excellent see. Look, they're on sale now. The cabins at Disney's Fort Wilderness Resort. The old cabins looked like cabins, but now they're describing this as modern meets rustic. I personally chuckle a little bit at that. What that sounds like to me is modern meets the design requirements that we were given and slowly waves them off as it moves down the lane. I don't see these things as rustic.
This is rustic meets cargo. I mean, let's just be honest.
So these things are only 502 square feet, and they're supposed to sleep 6. They are, like I said, supposed to be a consolidation of rustic and modern. And here's the thing that really kind of got in my craw, and I didn't much appreciate it. When I saw these documents, the Imagineers who were talking about it and talking about how great these cabins were, they talked down the original Fort Wilderness Cabins that were there for so long, calling them too dark, too depressing. The windows were too small. Those things, those quote unquote ugly things, just had to go. They did not like the old ones, which, by the way, were an excellent place to stay. If you wanted to get a hotel and not be out on the floor to heat the whole time, you got two options there. You could stay in your car and leave it on all night. That's not very cost effective at the Fort Wilderness Campground. Or you could bring an RV, also not very cost effective. These the cabins were an excellent way to stay in Fort Wilderness, essentially be surrounded by nature, and still be on Disney property, and still get some level of perks for staying on Disney property. It was an excellent value proposition, but Disney doesn't want that anymore. They want to upgrade you to a container. Guys, do you have any comments on that before we add to more of what is going on with Disney Vacation Club? Because we do have more.
Glamping with style.
Well, maybe so, but all I know is that at Home Depot, a 502 square foot shed cost me $900.
To be clear, I was describing I'm sure what they're thinking with this whole thing.
Right, and if you'll scroll down just a little bit, there, Culture. If you want to see what you're getting for your money here, that is what looks like maybe a full size, maybe a king size. I don't know. That's not a huge bed, but it's a two-person bed right next to a bunk bed. So that's 4 of your people right there. So if you want privacy, you better be sleeping in the living room of this thing.
Yeah. You're going to find tranquility in your private 1-bedroom cabin, complete with many comforts of home. Well, that's a queen-size bed. It's 60 by 80, and a couple of what do we call those now? They're not twins anymore. Are they doubles? What are those? Full size. Those are full size.
Is it full size? A double? I don't know. I'm not great on the mattress measurements here. Sleeping on a king and never looking back.
But they're selling you everything that's not the cabin,
right?
In this wonderful sales pitch. And again, I mean, you can't really blame them for not like trying to, encourage you to see just how much value is here. But if you're really not getting a washer and dryer, one of the primary benefits, is gone from any other 1-bedroom. Every other 1-bedroom that DVC offers.
Right, because it's supposed to be an extended stay kind of place.
Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be like your home away from home. That's what they call it. When you're greeted, they say you're home away from home. Welcome home. Welcome home is how you're greeted. You're even greeted that way at the theme parks if you're a DVC member. And interestingly enough, they are a value now, and they hate that word. They hate value passionately because it insinuates it's cheap. But in this case, I would argue kind of is.
It was an affordable option for people looking to stay on property, and that's what the previous cabins were to a lot of people. And there was some fondness there for a lot of people with these cabins and how they interacted with the rest of Fort Wilderness and that kind of log style that they had before. It was very charming.
It's interesting that you bring up Fort Wilderness. I want to get to your comment here, but in this same documentation that we saw, there was ragging on those Fort Wilderness lodges there, and the fact that they were so dark because of all of those logs. They talked about those logs like they were old and dark and were not inviting in any way. So that theming, that wilderness theming, that was in fact the selling point of the Fort Wilderness Lodge. That was a drawback. He wanted more color in there. He wanted more brightness, and they took out all of that cabin theme and replaced it with, if I can describe it as anything, it was cars and national parks. So to me, that actually says that it's a Route 66 theme more than it's a wilderness theme. It's not very wild. It's national parks and cars.
These are not LA style ranch stilt houses put out in the middle of the wilderness and in the Florida swamp. These are supposed to be charming. They're supposed to evoke a different era and a different time. It's really sad to see that modern Imagineers don't like that.
Well, it's a far cry from what you get from the Cascade cabins at Copper Creek, right? Which is another DVC I think everybody could have access to. If I'm not mistaken, am I wrong? because you have a lot of open beam work, a lot of that quote unquote darkness that seems rather bright if you've seen pictures of that. It's authentically decorated. It makes you feel like you are where you're supposed to be at one of these wonderful lodges. When you walk into the primary building, the main building, its theme is carried throughout. You can recognize it at a lot of these famous locations.
Mm.
You know, it's based on a famous location. And when you walk in, the exposed timber and the logs and everything, every element that went into that was amazing. You know, and of course,
would totally agree.
I'm certain they're going to turn, you know, Wilderness Lodge into another La Quinta entry at some point. But
well, that is of course the issue that they're showing here. And in the same presentation, they talked about their transformation of the Grand Floridian, which they described as their flagship resort, their flagship hotel, and we've seen a lot of commentary online about how these things are actually, instead of being themed, they're being de-themed for cheaper cost and less distinctness, and becoming more like a generic hotel space. So there is another if we can talk about the Polynesian resort for a moment.
sure.
Now, as far as darkness goes, we're talking about the Polynesian resort. Would you say that the Polynesian resort is just about on the same level of brightness as the Fort Wilderness Lodge?
Oh yeah.
So that one, this guy was forced to compliment the original Polynesian resort, because he talked about how it celebrated different aspects of culture, but he also had to talk up the new Poly Towers here. And he says that the old one was supposed to celebrate the heritage of Polynesia, but the Poly Towers are supposed to celebrate modern Polynesia. Oh, this is fantastic. So they're very proud of the tattoo art that they're putting on the buildings. They put a tattoo motif on it. I think this is part of trying to update the theming a little bit, because these things have been, everyone has said they're ugly, and the only thing that I've seen positively said about them is, wait, they might not be that ugly when they're done. There is some color going into them. They're very proud as well of the bars that are being put into the new Poly Towers. There are several bars that I think they'll be selling fireworks viewing packages for, because the bars are supposed to be great places to watch the fireworks. Obviously, these rooms are not finished yet, but I've seen some internal mock-ups, and this thing is bare bones. I am not impressed with this resort. I'm more impressed with, I would rather stay in the Fort Wilderness cabins, I'll say that, than I would in the mock-up that I saw of the Poly Tower rooms.
I'm telling you right now, Jonas, you're going to be staying in the finest Ramada Inn ever built.
I'll tell you where I'm staying. I'm staying at Bonnet Creek.
Hey, I will talk you into staying at Animal Kingdom Lodge.
Okay. See that I can get behind that. But right now, as I am a budget conscious father of many children, it's easier for me to stay off property. Actually, Bonnet Creek is not that off property. It's in property that is off property, but surrounded by property.
It is.
Anyways, for those of you who don't know, we could get into the history of Bonnet Creek at some point. Guys, do you have any reaction to this change and this new attitude at Disney Imagineering regarding DVC before we wrap up?
Well, I just think it's interesting. I mean, if you look at the points that it requires, the points charts that it requires to stay at these one bedrooms, you know, they're not all that much more affordable points wise than the other studio and one bedrooms, right? It does sleep up to 6, and most studios you can park more people in than you would expect, and in the one bedrooms you certainly can as well. But at 15 points a night on Sunday through Thursday, the least desirable nights, it's 15 points a night in September 1 to 30. Friday, you're going to spend 18 points, Friday to Saturday. Of course, that makes sense. It's the weekend. So if you want to stay there for a full week in September, it's 111 points. You have other places that you could stay. You want to look at that. You have a points chart here for Disney's, well, wow, what do you know? Animal Kingdom Lodge, the Animal Kingdom Villas. And if you look, I mean, you know, in the deluxe studio, you're in a value room, you stay, it's 7 points a night, right? In September.
Right.
You know,
amazing.
For a regular studio, it's 10, and for Savannah View, right?
And that is an amazing hotel. That is,
it is. It is.
That is a one of a kind experience, and of course we can thank Joe Rohde for being the kind of person that is behind that kind of project. But Joe Rohde is no longer a full-time employee of the Walt Disney Company. He's just doing master classes now, and
That's
of course
true.
we're now in a situation where things like Epic Universe and the Stella Nova and the Terra Luna Resort are allowed to come in and outclass Walt Disney World, because Walt Disney World is lowering their hotel standards to a point that it is easy for Universal to come in and say, hey, we're a little bit better than that, maybe even a little cleaner, and looks like a little cheaper too. So here we are. Vash, wrap us up.
If I can add in one more thing right here, the right of first refusal market is very strange when it comes to Disney, going from thousands in 2021 all the way to like 3 so far this year. I think last year was a total of 8. So it's just, or I guess 16. I guess it's very strange what is going on within DVC right now. And I think this corroborates your point, Jonas. I think they're looking to revamp DVC in a way that is maybe more or economically viable in the future. It's very, very interesting. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on what is going on with this Disney Vacation Club, such a cornerstone of the Walt Disney Company's business.
We want to throw this to our commenters. This is an unusual subject for us because we don't usually get into the Disney Vacation Club specifically, but this is where Disney is looking to find their extra capacity, and by extra capacity, extra money-making capacity for the parks. This is outside of whether or not they add actual rides into the parks themselves. So if you have any comments below, let us know, because I'm really curious to see what you all think about this situation, in particular the downgrade of the styling at some of these parks, but maybe a point towards making them more economical for the average guest to get into that Disney Vacation Club experience. Let us know in the comment section down below. Of course, like this video if you like this video, and consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.